Good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Safety Subcommittee meeting. Mr. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Chairman Rourke,
Here.
Counsel Belanger,
Here.
Counsel Mercia.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you. Once again, here tonight, Tuesday, July 22nd, 2014, meeting in the council chambers with regards to Public Safety Subcommittee. Tonight, there's a motion by Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Mercia, to request the city manager to have a LPD strictly enforce the curfew ordinance. Number 2 is a communication from the city manager, the proposed amendment to Chapter 222 to create a new section of the ordinance regarding synthetic recreational drugs. And third, the informational update on gun incidents in the city by the police department, and also an update on the use of Narcan by the fire department. Chief Perry is here tonight. Chief, could you please give us an update on the Narcan and the EpiPen use for the city?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to. We've always had the goal of completing our training by the end of July, and I spoke to our EMS coordinator just Monday, and we are on schedule. He expects to complete all the training by the end of the month. The memorandum of understanding for the medical direction with Dr. Drake and Lowell General Hospital are signed and in place, and we expect to be operational the first or second week of August. And that would be both the Narcan and the Epi. And the only remaining piece to that is the funding for it, and I've put the cost estimate in front of you there.
Thank you, Chief. Is that something you can speak with the manager about as far as the supplemental budget or whatnot to fund for that?
He's sitting right there, side of you.
Mr. Manager?
Well, certainly, I mean, this is a necessity in what's going on in our society right now, and obviously we will find a way to deal with it. As I look at my CFO, we will find a way.
Yes.
I'm sure he's looking hard.
He's looking for it as we speak, and that's a good thing because this saves lives. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the manager, I mean, I think I know the answer to this going into it, but I know this is not, more or less not an ambulance service we're doing here, quite as necessity as it is, and I'm all for it, but we're in no position to bill individuals who use these services, right? It is?
No.
No, okay.
But I mean, my research and my experience is that this saves lives.
Oh, I totally, I am on board with, absolutely, but I was just,
So,
I
no,
thought.
I understand. I'm committed to this as much as anybody, and I understand that you are, and we'll make sure that we take care of it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I know we also have Superintendent Taylor here this evening, along with Deputy Commissioner Ryan. Superintendent, I know last time we spoke about this, there was a thought about putting this on some other police units in the city. Any
Yes.
thoughts on that?
I think the discussion centered around incorporating it into our special investigations or our drug unit. We're still in the process of evaluating that, and essentially I think what we're going to do is wait for the fire department to roll out their portion of it, and then when we finish fortifying that unit with additional personnel to address some of the gang issues in the city, that'll probably come into play later in the summer.
Great, thank you. Chief Perry, thank you very much for coming tonight. On to the first motion of the evening is a motion by Mayor Elliott, which is seconded by Councilor Mercia. Was request the city manager to have the Lowell Police Department strictly enforce the curfew ordinance. Councilor Mercia?
Well, I did second this motion because I thought that every piece to the puzzle would help to create a better environment in the city of Lowell. And I think the public feels that way as well. It's one thing to let your child go out and have a good time and this and that, but when you see 10-year-olds riding a bike and it's 11:30 at night, and I said before, they're not going over to grandma's, so I'm thinking, who knows what they're doing out. Anybody out at that time of night is, to me, up to no good. So I'm wondering, how do we address this issue? I know at the time, many years ago, we addressed this ordinance because if we picked up a child that should have been home, we brought him to a detention center, and we called the mother and said, come down and get your child, and they knew that, this is not, should not be that way. but I don't know that we have such a program set up right now. So how do we deal with the curfew ordinance that says children under 18 should not be out? And I realize that maybe people are 17 and they have a job, or people that 18 that look maybe 16 and they're stopped and they have a legitimate reason, they're going to work. I understand that. But if you see a young child and they're out and about going through the downtown, they're not doing something right. Somebody's not paying attention to them, and it almost becomes our responsibility. So how is this curfew ordinance going to be enforced to help us to that piece of the puzzle to have, sometimes we have to do the work of the parents, and, you know, and so I don't know how we're going to address this curfew issue. This is the mayor
Well,
brought this up.
If you'd like me to, Mr. Manager. Counselor, the city council, the city solicitor, myself, and the city manager have discussed this. The city ordinance related to the curfew at this point, I believe, subjects the city and the officers to some unnecessary liability as it's currently constituted. And the reason for that is the criminal component to this, which allows police officers to make arrests and take these juveniles into some form of custody, has been determined to be unconstitutional by the state appellate court. That leaves us with a civil remedy, essentially the ability to give a ticket or a fine violation to somebody. The problem with that is, Counselor, that if we we have to always plan contingencies, and if we follow that from an operational perspective, an officer encounters somebody at 1 o'clock in the morning that they make a determination is in violation of the curfew, everything's great unless the person refuses to cooperate and refuses to give the officer their name, where they live, their age. Then the officer is in a very uncomfortable and awkward position. If he can't compel that person with the threat of criminal sanctions, especially arrest, the officer is subjecting himself and the city to some significant liability. For example, do we have the ability to forcibly take that juvenile into some form of custody and bring them home? Not really. That's the problem. So I think the city solicitor would probably maybe like to speak to this, but I think the appropriate way to address this is to recraft the ordinance with an appropriate legal sanction, criminal sanction to it, so that the officer has the ability to exercise that.
You know, Chief, why am I not surprised to hear what you're telling me? Because, and we're wondering why society is going down the drain when criminals have more power and more rights than the victim. When we can try to help society by, you know, helping children to become better by making them know what's right from wrong, our hands become tied at every avenue that they now have rights. They have the right to be 10 years old and be out till 12 and 1 in the morning. They have a right. That's why there are more prisons and more jails and less churches. And then we wonder why society is going down the tubes. I'm not surprised to hear it. And it's very, very frustrating when the public blames the government officials for not doing their job, when we try to do our job and restructure an ordinance only to have, like, the American Civil Liberties saying, oh, little Johnny is 9 and he can be out till 12 o'clock. And so it's just so frustrating all around that we try to make this a better, safe society, and more liberties are given to those that could care less. I could go on and on with a number of examples, but I'd probably never be elected again. And personally, I'm getting to the point where it's tough to speak the truth, to say what you feel, because, I don't know, it's so frustrating to me to know that the criminals and the thugs are taking over the city and the good people are being locked up in their house. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion about unwanted people congregating on the benches downtown, and the first reaction was, well, let's get rid of the benches. Oh, that's just right. Let's get rid of the benches when the good people that need to rest their weary bones can't sit there now because the thugs took it over and we had to take it away. I'm disgusted with the way society is. We should revert back to the old days. That's what I say.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We all know what kind of year it's been here in the city. It's been as violent in recent years that I can remember, perhaps in our history. I am not pointing fingers, but it is time for drastic measures. Okay, we have something in place here I think needs to be reviewed, okay? I'm downtown almost every night of the week, okay? It's not only in the downtown, it's in all the neighborhoods citywide. But these kids are out late night, and for the most part, are up to no good. I'm sorry. They have no fear. I mean, I was a kid once too. We all were. Was I out when I was 15, 16 out on occasion? Yes, there's no two ways about it. But you know what? I feared my parents, and I feared the law, okay? These kids do not. They're more brazen. They know nothing happens to them. They're smarter than we all give them credit for. They know they can't be touched. They know you can't put them in jail. And they will say it. They're very sarcastic. They will tell the officers. I've spoken to many officers on the street. They seem to be very carefree in this situation. We need stronger measures in place. Our men and women in law enforcement if we expect results, we need to give them the tools to get the job done. And it comes down to this council. So I do support referring this to the law department for an ordinance review and restructure. Now, do we not, you, Chief, do we not have at least a $50 fine in place right now? A civil infraction? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Okay, all right. Very minimal. I don't think we've issued one in several years, right, if at all. And it's understandable. It's like nothing. It's a piece of paper. But it's time we get serious, and let's see if we can put them in a facility overnight. Let's see if we can accomplish that. Let's see if this fine can be attached. We're tied into the registry, are we not? Our parking tickets, give it to the registry. When they someday they're going to be getting their learner's permit and licenses. That will be there plus interest when they go to do it. Let them know that they're going to pay eventually for their actions. So there needs to be repercussions. This city has had enough, okay? And we all need to work together, and this is one important element of that puzzle, I believe very, very strongly, because I see it. These kids are on bikes and skateboards, motoring through the sidewalks in downtown like no tomorrow. It's rampant, and it's all over the city as well. I'm not just here to protect the downtown. I work for the city. But this is an issue, and I want to get this stronger measures in place so the men and women on the street can do their job efficiently. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to send the curfew ordinance to the law department for review.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
3 yeas.
Thank you.
Any public discussion on the curfew ordinance? Moving on, second agenda item of the evening is communication from the city manager to propose the amendment to Chapter 222 to create a new section entitled Synthetic Recreational Drugs. With us tonight is Director of the Health Department, Frank Singleton, and Christine, I'm sorry, I forgot your last name.
Christine O'Connor. Christine Connolly, I'm sorry.
Christine Connolly. Welcome both. Mr. Manager?
Last council meeting, we accepted a gift from Lowell General Hospital of $50,000 to combat the substance abuse problem in the city of Lowell. Part of the problem that we have are these so-called designer drugs. They're like bath salts, other things that are being sold in stores throughout the city of Lowell that are being used for illicit purposes as substance abuse. This ordinance addresses that problem that exists in the city right now. It allows us, and this gift that we received from Lowell General Hospital is going to allow us the personnel to pursue these designer drugs and eradicate them from the stores of Lowell and then help out in the substance abuse program. We have Mr. Singleton and Ms. Conley here. If you'd just like, Ms. Conley, if you could just address for me the issue and how we're going to deal with this.
Working to combat the epidemic of opioid overdose. So the funding that we have allows us to do that work. What we've discovered in the interim, working with the police department, working with Lowell House Incorporated, is that we would get calls saying, you know, a client has picked up bath salts or whatever designer drug at such and such a location on such and such a street. We would then notify the police department, you know, the drug unit, and they would act on that. The funding that we have currently only allows us to do opioid drug awareness as well as opioid overdose prevention education. It doesn't allow us, that particular grant funding doesn't allow us to do the work on these particular synthetic drugs that are packaged with like Scooby-Doos and things like that on it, that is packaged to gear towards youth purchasing it. So we historically know that they are being sold in specific stores or in some stores here in the city. And so working with Lowell General through the Substance Use and Prevention Task Force, you know, they reached out to us after hearing us several times speak about this issue and said, how can we help? So they offered us this monies to be able to hire a outreach worker, you know, and we looked at best practices and saw other communities creating ordinances to do this. So this outreach worker would, once the ordinance is created and put into place, the outreach worker would then educate convenience stores, because that's typically where we see it. We don't see it in a supermarket or something like that, or Staples or anything like that. We would educate, this particular outreach worker would educate, and then once we discover, so first it'd be that education, and then once we either get a call or it's discovered that it's for sale in such and such a store, we would then notify LPD, who would then do their piece of it. This particular outreach worker would also do a lot of education with the hospitals, schools, parent-teacher organizations, things like that. Because again, this is really marketed towards youth, although there are adults that use it as well.
It's also broader in the sense that we are looking at the Molly and all these other so-called club drugs as well that a lot of people think are safe. They know opiates because of the education are dangerous, and they are, but they seem to think, if you remember the Herald about 2 weeks ago, that 50 people out of TD Garden ended up being hauled by ambulance. So we want to work with the schools, work with the colleges on these aren't safe. They may be safer, that they don't kill you quite like opioids can, but they still can cause all sorts of brain issues. We're now seeing methamphetamine starting to creep back into New England. So it'll not just be what the ordinance says, which is important, it's also a broader educational campaign about all these other abused drugs, especially among younger people who are taking it for the concerts and other exposures where this is part of the culture on the assumption that they're safe. They're not.
Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to Christine, Frank. Do the proprietors of the convenience stores, do they realize what they're selling, or do they not know this?
You know, honestly, I'm not sure of that. I'm not sure. We've not actually been able to go out and have these conversations. I don't know if the police department knows differently. Sometimes it is, you know, the way it's packaged and sold, you know, not for human consumption. You might see something like bath salts on it. So honestly, I'm not sure if they're aware of it. That's why that educational component first. Education is always, it's so powerful to educate people. But then if in fact they realize that it's not safe, and then if in fact there is an ordinance and they realize that the city does have an ordinance, that education will be done. And then hopefully they won't be sold. But ideally, is that going to happen? I'm not sure.
So we can't say for sure that we've seen it in this convenient or variety stores in the city,
Oh,
right?
we have seen it. We
You have seen it.
absolutely have seen it. on
And we've also been
several
told by
occasions.
Lowell House and other places a number of times calling up
Yes.
saying, we know our clients are saying this is available. Potpourri is another way they call it. It's using spice, using what looks like a herbal compound with synthetic additives.
It's there. It's
So are we
absolutely, it's
saying
there.
we don't have any power to go into the stores and ask them to take it off the shelf, or we haven't done that yet?
There's a state regulation, but what happens is different molecules get changed. And so they're very savvy. The people that create these drugs, they're very savvy, and they know that. That's why in some of the other communities, they have created a city ordinance that actually brings it one step further.
So you're asking us to create an ordinance so that this would give you teeth to go in and get it?
Yes.
Gotta take it off
Then
the
so
shelf.
be it. Then so be it. This is important.
Thank you. Council Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council Mercy, I think you hit the nail on the head there. That's the way to combat this. If we can't use certain money towards to fight one thing, then we'll create an ordinance. I mean, I'm in a lot of stores throughout the city. I mean, you go to the counter, I see one that has a jackknife, sells a 6-8-inch jackknife, something you could hunt water buffalo with. Why would somebody need that in the city? For no good, okay? That's another whole nother issue. But these things, if they're problems, let us know how they're going about it. And, you know, I've dealt with, I worked at a local wholesaler right here in the city, and I dealt with store owners for almost 20 years. And they're all hardworking, most part, hardworking people, but they're also very intelligent. They know what they're selling can have detrimental use. For the most part, in tune on what these products are. You know, when you sell cigar wrappers, what do you think they're being used for? It's common sense now. So I think we need to take a look at this. Let us know what this stuff is. I mean, bath salts, are you kidding me? What are they doing? Are they smoking? What are they doing with bath salts?
Well, it's not really bath salts. What they do is they put these, it's like saying a bottle of water is white wine. It's not, they're not bath salts, but they also stamp not for human consumption when it's clearly designed for human consumption. So they play this game to try to avoid enforcement, and that's what we're going to try to counterbalance with this ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Commissioner. But you know, they're going to play their game, we'll play ours.
Exactly.
Okay? So let us know what they're doing, what these substances are over the counter. Let the council know, and I think you'd have great support on banning these citywide. Citywide.
So would you plan on creating a position by ordinance for this, because right now, there currently is not a position in place for it?
Mr. Manager?
First of all, the real teeth in this ordinance is once we have the education and the stores continue to sell these products, is either the police department or our developmental services office can issue a $300 fine for each day that these products are being sold by the establishment. So it's going to be an economic penalty that's going to be very difficult for them to withstand unless they take the product off the shelves. So it's a great enforcement tool, especially that we have the Development Services Office able to do it also. As far as creating a position, we're certainly going to look into the staffing and how this will be implemented, and I'll report back to you after. We just wanted to get the ordinance in effect so we can start doing this with these drugs, and then we'll look at the staffing issues.
So, Mr. Manager, would you need a motion for this subcommittee to recommend that the city solicitor draft an ordinance and a vote on a position and this synthetic?
We have
drug?
one, we have an ordinance that you could, what we're asking you is that the city solicitor's office has drafted an ordinance.
Right.
That would ban the sale of these
So you're
drugs.
asking for support from this subcommittee?
Yes, to
Is there a
accept this.
position on that?
No.
There is not?
No.
So we can support the ordinance,
Yes.
but then look into the feasibility of having a position with that?
Correct.
Okay, that's fine.
We should be 100% grant funded through the hospital.
Right.
So.
All right. I make a motion that this subcommittee recommend adoption of this synthetic drug use ordinance.
I'll second the motion, but I'd like to comment as well that throughout this, let's communicate with these store owners that through letters or visits, I know there's a lot of stores throughout the city, I don't pretend it's easy, but that, you know, you have such and such on your shelf, and it's going to, you can maybe ask them voluntarily to remove these, or let them know what's in the making ordinances against these products. Maybe they'll voluntarily take them off. I know a lot of them personally, actually, but But, let's keep them in tune. Let's not blindside them. They walk in and say, you got that, here's a fine. Let's be fair but tough at the same time, so.
I think as the word gets out that there's a penalty and it's associated, a lot of these are just making an extra $20, $30 by selling this under the counter. It's not worth the risk. You're certainly not going to see a Rite Aid or CVS or people like that. These are these small, there's about
Yes.
51 of them by our actual count, convenience stores operated by small businessmen who often need to make some money and they think this is a profitable, perhaps, sideline, but not profitable enough for them to do it once we start telling them the consequences.
That's it exactly, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you.
So, Mr. Singleton, they know what they're doing, right? They know what they're selling, obviously, right?
I would say yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
for the
Manager, do
most
you want
part.
that vote this evening at the city council meeting?
That would be good if you could do that.
Great.
Yeah.
Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Chairman Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
That's 3 yeas.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Frank. Moving on, informational part of the agenda. An update on the gun incidents in the city. Today we have, once again, Chief Taylor, Deputy Ryan, Deputy Friedel, Mary Ann Bellotta from the Lowell Police Department. Chief?
Thank you very much, Councilor Rourke. We have increased our strategy in several different areas related to some of the incidents of violence, especially gun violence in the city. I'm going to break it down into two specific components. I'm going to address the investigative strategy as it relates to some of the gang/drug activity in the city. And Deputy Ryan's going to discuss some of the specific patrol response to this strategy to our activity. With respect to our investigative strategy, we have a program in place where we're using motor vehicle enforcement to work cooperatively with our detective units and the State Police Gang Unit to attack problem locations as identified by our Crime Analysis Unit, and specifically indicating the times and locations that we believe they can be most effective. In addition to that, hopefully, people in the city have noticed an increased uniform enforcement activity after approximately 10 or 11 o'clock at night, specifically addressing motor vehicle enforcement with us and also our partners in the Mass State Police. They've been in several nights a week. Their community action team and also components of their gang unit have been working with our gang/investigative services, especially the Special Investigations Unit. So the Criminal Investigative Unit is working with Crime Analysis to develop an intelligence unit response to this and coordinate with both patrol and detectives. As I've indicated, the Mass State Police Gang Unit has been teaming up with our Special Investigations Unit, which is now our gang component in the city, specifically on the weekends. Our strategy moving forward in terms of our investigative response is to continue to implement our specialized group of detectives that will work under the direction of our Special Investigations Unit, a specialized, specific gang unit within that organization in the department, dedicated to connection between gang and drug enforcement, which is what we've currently see the profile of the gang activity in the city. Our Special Investigation Unit currently does all the investigations related to illegal narcotics and gaming activity in the city. It's our belief that much of the gang-related violence is happened over the past several weeks and years, has a drug and a profit motive to it in terms of its component to the why they're doing these acts of violence. By having an additional 4 detectives working out of the Special Investigations Unit under the direction of a supervisor, their main responsibility will be to focus on long-term gang investigations, specifically the connection and the nexus between the illegal drug distribution in the city by gang members. And they will partner and collaborate with outside agencies on a regular, continuing basis, such as the Mass State Police Gang Unit, and certainly our federal partners, including the FBI, the DEA, and the ATF, to try and make a reduction in this activity as we move forward. One other component that we have been involved in, and specifically I've tried to personally address over the past couple of weeks, is community outreach. And before I went on vacation and continuing after I came back, a concerted effort, not only by me, but other members in the police department, has been to reach out to all portions of the community, with a special renewed emphasis in the Southeast Asian community, to enlist their support and their collaboration to address these gang issues in their community. We've specifically been on 2 television shows that are geared towards the Khmer-speaking portion of our population in the city, in conjunction with our community liaison, Sarah Coombe, who is tremendous and has tremendous respect in the Southeast Asian community. And she was instrumental in the city's response to the recent tragic fire on Branch Street. We've also been on 2 radio programs that specially focus towards the Southeast Asian community. And last evening, I had the pleasure to attend a community dialogue on Branch Street at the CMAA headquarters on Branch Street. Actually, they're moving from it, so they're going to be on School Street in the near future. But they were nice enough to host a community dialogue and forum, which was actually very well attended by several members of the community, to discuss how we can collaborate and increase our outreach efforts to the Southeast Asian community to try and get more collaboration and cooperation. And specifically what I asked them to do in all these outreach opportunities that we've done is I've asked them for help. We need the community's help to have an effective community policing program in the city. That's how it works. It's a absolute necessity. And we will continue, obviously, those outreach efforts. Anytime we're asked, I personally and my staff will make ourselves available. Deputy Ryan will talk about the specific patrol activity.
Thank you, Chief. A lot of what the patrol force is doing has been touched upon by the chief, and it's important to note that no entity within the police department is working by itself. The patrol force has been using information that it gets from crime analysis as well as the detective units, and utilizing some of our the smart policing techniques that we've been going over the last couple of years. We've essentially been deploying officers to locations and times where the data is showing us are most likely going to be the most beneficial to, to try to quell some of this violence. We also, looking at CompStat, we just had a CompStat last week, for example, and the topic of the recent violence certainly carried the day. And out of that meeting came a coordinated effort, essentially, re-emphasizing the priority of the police department is, in fact, to curb this violence that we've been talking about. Patrol officers have been utilizing overtime that's supplied by the city budget, as well as many of the grants that we are fortunate enough to have. We've been putting extra officers on duty in various different patrol strategies in locations around the city, with the idea to work with these other entities, for example, the state police and the detectives, in a concerted effort to ensure that there are enough officers to hopefully quell some of this. And we do know that these incidents are occurring. We do know where they're happening. As the investigative process continues, we start to know, in fact, some of the people that we believe are involved. And with that information, the patrol force is able to target those locations and perhaps be a little closer to some of the individuals with a deterrent effect. And unfortunately, we never know how many of these situations we've prevented by this aggressive enforcement and this visible presence out there. But we do know we will continue to do it, and the men and women of the police department are committed. So, like I said, this is priority number 1 right now.
Great, thank you. Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the chief. I know that the last city council meeting 2 weeks ago, we proceeded to go into executive session, and we learned a lot about strategy that I'm not going to talk about right now, but things seemed positive, and yet that's where it ended. I don't know anything about what happened. I don't know the results of what took place, and I'm curious to know that, did your strategy pay off? What happened? And we're left in limbo here. I don't know what happened, and I'm curious to know. Having said that, I think that perception is everything. Perception. If the public or the surrounding communities believe that everything is being done to stop the violence, that maybe we're doing the best that we can, but if we can present things through ordinances and initiatives, and community policing is excellent. I have more people say to me, my God, the police are out on bicycles, they're on segways, everything. That's perception. That is perfect. But when you know that there are fractions in place like the Civil Liberties Union that is diluting and watering down every darn thing that we're strengthening up, the perception gets watered down, and it's very, very frustrating. Having said that, I'm just curious to know, did we disband the Warrant Apprehension Unit?
Yes, we did.
Why would we do that?
Well, because we
Here
took...
we go, we're watering it down again.
Yeah. Well, I think what the appropriate way that we viewed that is that we took those assets, those people that were in that particular unit, and we redeployed them into community policing programs. There's only so many police officers in the city, and to have an effective community policing program, to put those officers in the field, in uniform, on foot and bicycles, they have to come from somewhere. And we felt as though that we can accomplish that goal, that task of making warrant arrests with on-duty personnel as part of their community policing activities. So instead of having a dedicated unit that only deals with warrant enforcement and nothing else, we spread that responsibility across the patrol force. So everybody, as part of their activity, as it was when I came on the police department, you went out every day and you looked for a certain number of people in your patrol area that had active warrants on them.
And they did a tremendous job. They're
They did.
almost reaching 800 people that would have otherwise thumbed their nose at the court system and said, oh, so what that there's a warrant on me? They're not going to ever come and get me anyway. That was perception with this unit. And they knew that, I got a warrant, I better go and turn myself in or whatever, they'll come and find me. This is what I try to say. Perception is everything in this city, and I'm just trying to reinforce that.
Right. No, I understand.
Thanks.
I think, Councilman Rich, just a real quick note that actually the city's probation department is actually now going out with the police department, and as well as doing home checks. So there's a warrants sweep that does happen from time to time. So while a team may be disbanded, there is a section that is going on doing such things.
Thank you, Councilman.
Council Samaras?
Thank you, Chairman Rourke. To the chief, I was pleased to see in the paper that you were reaching out to the different communities, and I think that's very important. I think you have found that many of the parents would support the curfew, or the parents would support many other initiatives of making sure that their children don't go astray. Have you thought about developing some type of, whether a seminar or workshop for parents on their rights? Because too often we talk about, as you were talking about, if you were to pick up a child on the streets, they're aware of their rights, what you can do or not do with them. But I found in dealing with a lot of the parents, especially immigrant parents new to this country, they're really not aware of their rights. And is there a possibility of developing something like that? I think you'd get a lot of help, if they knew you were reaching out to them, personally.
Thank you, Councilor. Actually, that was discussed last night. That was brought up in the community dialogue at the CMAA. Exactly that point that many parents don't understand that it's not good to be in gangs, and they need some additional support from the community, from the city, and the police department. So we discussed strategies to approach exactly what you're talking about, and I will continue to have a dialogue with the Southeast Asian community and other groups in the city to discuss exactly that. One of the key components that they talked about was building trust. And it starts with a simple conversation, a uniformed officer walking the beat, in engaging in some simple conversation about the weather or a sports team or whatever it might be. And that's how you build trust in the community. And then when you need them for a more difficult conversation about crime in their community, you rely back on that trust that was built in a previous conversation. So I think those community policing efforts will, in large part, build on that trust.
Well, thank you for that answer, but I think if you want to expand to that area and you need the resources, I think this council will be ready to help you with that.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Manazzo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me begin by applauding the police department for your partnership approach to this situation that we have in the city. I have two questions, actually. I know that the district attorney's office is working with the police department and the state police and so forth. Do you feel like you're getting the support from the court system when you bring some of these cases into district court here in Lowell? Are you getting the support? I know I understand there's a law where that if you're caught with a gun, there's a 1-year automatic prison sentence, and I don't believe that's being enforced. And then my second question is has more to do with the deployment issue and whether or not you've thought about whether or not, and again, I may have the numbers wrong, and it's probably also a union or a bargaining issue, but if we have 15, say, resource officers in the schools, do we actually need 15, or can those police officers, men and women, be deployed, again, under your direction in a better manner? And I don't know the answer to that, but I guess my question is the courts and then whether or not we do need the 15 resource officers.
By and large, Counselor, the courts are a valuable asset to the police department, obviously, and we work together on a day-in and day-out basis. They have a very difficult job to do, as Counselor Rourke sees on a daily basis. So I wouldn't want to put them in a negative light at all. They have to make those decisions. And, under our system of government, people have a right to bail when they're only accused of a crime, and that's certainly one of the strengths of our society. So we work with them pretty closely. Clearly, we're not always pleased with the outcomes we get, but in general, I don't see them as a major impediment to our progress in the city. With respect to the school resource officer question, we actually, as part of our realignment and our reorganization, we did meet with the school department, and we asked them for cooperation in reducing the number of school resource officers in the city, and then more appropriately, strategically aligning them into schools. So we did cut one school resource officer position during the reorganization in March. And they were very agreeable to and cooperative with that. We also, what I think took a more reasonable and appropriate strategy, we actually, before that, some middle schools had full-time school resource officers and some middle schools had none. So it was feast or famine, if you will. We thought a more appropriate strategy would be to geographically assign these school resource officers and give each school resource officer 2 middle schools along with maybe 1 or 2 elementary schools so that every school in the city had a school resource officer that they could reach out to. And that in combination with, I think it's currently three school resource officers that are full-time assigned to the high school. So that has been accomplished. I know they'd like more, quite candidly, but I think the current allotment of school resource officers is appropriate.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Chief, I do want to applaud you that, I think you and your department are doing all you can and extending all your resources. And, we're not where we want to be, unfortunately, but I think you're doing a fantastic job, you and your department. I think visibility has picked up immensely. I see it because I'm out at all times of the day and night. So I can't fault you for that, for sure. However, one thing I'd like to point out is where are we at with the gang unit now? How many officers in the gang unit now?
Well, as a matter of fact, we're going to increase the component of officers in that special investigation / gang unit this week. So I anticipate we'll be able to accomplish to put 4 additional detectives specifically dedicated to gang investigations and working, being actually like a force multiplier with the state police gang unit in the North Shore. So then when they come into the city, they have a ready-made place to go and a team of officers that they've already built a relationship, which is critical to an effective collaboration in investigative efforts. So that's where they'll go. One of the components that I was somewhat reluctant to do up until this point was to put officers there without the appropriate supervision. And we're going to make those lieutenant promotions this week. So I need to put a very capable, aggressive lieutenant in that Special Investigations Unit. We've been delayed in doing that. That's going to be accomplished that week. In conjunction with that, we'll fortify that investigative unit for gang investigations.
Excellent, okay. I think the future bodes well. Now, you talked about additional officers on the peak hours of activity. Now, how many officers additional are we talking from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., say, in what areas are we concentrating on?
Let Deputy Ryan handle that.
Thank you.
Well, now, without getting into too specifics as far as the strategy goes,
Yep.
what I can say is, depending, for example, on a typical night that we see that there's a problem, what we'll do is we generally put a supervisor. We'll generally have anywhere between 2 and 4 officers that are assigned to different sections of the city. We utilize different strategies. We have motorcycles out there on some nights to be very mobile and visible. On other nights, in conjunction with that, we may have bicycle officers that are in more congested neighborhoods and things like that. So there isn't a cookie-cut answer for your question as to where and exactly how many officers. But again, it's driven by the data. It's driven by the information we have that is updated nearly on a daily basis from crime analysis, as well as the information we're getting from the investigations. And, the investigations are producing very, very good actionable intel that I can turn around and transfer into the patrol force and these specialized units. The other component is they don't operate in a vacuum. When we put one of these, like a tactical team or whatever you want to call it, a community action team, as some departments call it, when we put one of these teams together, they work along with the patrol officers from those neighborhoods that are conducting their regular preventive patrol and responding to issues. They all work as a team, so it's like the term was used earlier, it's a force multiplier. And, recently they've been out there along with detectives in plain clothes. Putting an ad hoc team together for a specific purpose with, specific goals in mind. But again, at this point in time, I can't say that, like, tonight what's going to happen and where it's going to happen for obvious reasons.
No, this is not, there's no crystal ball in this, Deputy. I understand that. As visible I think we are, we can't be everywhere. And I think that's the right answer, where you're maneuvering officers to where the activity is. It may be Centerville and then Belvedere, or whatever it may be. Yeah, so that's a good philosophy. So we're with you. We're in this together. And we're a team, and we got to do whatever it takes to curb this violence, because it is ruining our city, quite frankly. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor. Quickly, any comments, public discussion? Okay. With that being said, motion to adjourn.
Yes, motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you very much for coming.